With the 32nd pick, the Jazz drafted 7-footer Kyle Filipowski out of Duke. Cody Williams, Isaiah Collier have me totally fired up. Filipowski, I get why he went 32nd. Next on Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 pow.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider, and this is Locked On Jazz. Today, I break down Kyle Filipowski. I watched the 2 games he played against high-level NBA-ish talent, Boston College and Baylor last night. And I'll give you a breakdown of the 32nd pick of the NBA draft. And then we'll dig into Ask LOJ Friday questions, a bunch of questions about Isaiah Collier comps and some good ones. One good super question on how do each of these guys hit to give us a top-level player. And then looking toward the Jazz future, what is Walker Kessler's fit? What if we get one of these offers for Lowry Markkanen? And how will the Jazz use their cap space coming up with free agency? That's all coming up on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. As I mentioned, I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps. We're also available on YouTube. Thank you very much for your thoughts and joining the show. Comments are always welcome. Hit us on DLock09 on the Twitter thing, which was actually active and decent yesterday and not just a bunch of bots asking me if I'd like to join their secret chat. All sorts of various things like that. So anyway, all right, let's get to it. I watched Kyle Filipowski last night. And if you don't know a lot about the Jazz 32nd pick, he's 7 feet tall. His wingspan, not his standing reach, I made a little mistake yesterday, is shorter than his height. So that's unusual. But he is 7 feet tall. He went to the 32nd pick of the draft. Duke ran, in a lot of games, Duke ran a lot of stuff through him. Interestingly enough, against Baylor with Missy, who got drafted earlier, and Boston College, who had Yost, who got drafted in the second round, they did not. It was noticeably different to me how John Shire used Filipowski when there was a higher level big there. The other one that was really interesting is that Filipowski didn't guard Yost. He guarded somebody else on Boston College who did so to allow him to kind of stand near the basket. So Filipowski without shoes is 6'10 and 3/4, so he's 7 feet tall. His standing reach is 8'11. His wingspan is 6'10 and a half. And he weighs about 230 pounds. I think he's the only player at the combine who had a negative wingspan. So let me just be clear about a few things here. Just big picture. I'm geeked about Cody Williams. Think he has a chance to be an all-star. Like, of the two, if I had to choose 2 guys to be an all-star in this draft, I would take Reed Sheppard and I would take Cody Williams. And then Donovan Clingan is like kind of a wild card to me of like, or maybe Zach Edey. Like, it can one of these huge guys just do something nobody else can do. And therefore okay, that's it. Then Isaiah Collier to me was a guy you literally had to go get. Like, I was losing it in the picks prior to the Jazz because there were trades being made for picks that the Jazz had better components to trade for. And I couldn't figure out why the Jazz weren't trading up to get Isaiah Collier. Filipowski does not fire me up. Like, I get why we drafted him, and I understand why he's 32nd. At the same time, like 32nd pick in the draft doesn't usually make it, and that's kind of how I think it's going to be really hard for him. So let me give you a breakdown of his game from what I watched. He's pretty skilled, right? And we get excited and we try this Kelly Olynyk comp. I don't see it at all. That's not a comp. I went with it on my little thing because everyone goes with it. But the more I watch it, I don't see Kelly Olynyk comp at all. Filipowski's really skilled. He can play with a bounce. He's really good at outlet passing. He can kind of shoot it. He's comfortable shooting it. I don't know enough about shot fundamentals. I'm always kind of wowed and impressed when my colleagues are able to kind of do these analysis of jump shots and things like that. It's just not something I do. You've never heard me try to do it. I don't think I know enough to do it. But I would just give the thought that the way he shoots looks to me as though it could be a struggle for him to stretch out. I could be wrong. He was 73rd percentile in spot up shooting, which is pretty good. He was the 66th percentile in catch and shoot overall. And he actually hit 12 of his 26 shots in which he dribbled first. So he's really skilled. And that's why he got drafted into the NBA. He does some other things well. He has a good two-hand above rebounder. He gets his hands on balls and tips them away. So he's actively involved in rebounds. He has good passing recognition. Like, he's actually really good in the short roll. And these are, by the way, all of these things right here are enough skills to draft him 32nd. I'm going to give you the negative in a minute, and that's why he went 32nd and why second-round draft picks have a hard time. For all the talk, I actually feel like the player I watched in these two games against Baylor and Boston College was just super different than the narrative. Like, the narrative on him is he can't move his feet. I actually thought he was better in switch defense than he was in drop. I actually thought his drop defense was pretty terrible. He's not big. He's not long. He doesn't protect the rim. And I didn't think he was very good on second actions. Like, if he was dropping and then they did something else and he had to switch and move and get to the next spot, I didn't think he could do it. That's what made Rudy like the greatest defensive player in the history of the game. But when he got switched in both the Baylor and the Boston College game, he was fine. Now, that's not against the greatest players, but fine. Like, he was fine. Everyone talks about how good he is offensively against two good defensive NBA level defensive players, and Yost and Misi. In his 2-point shots in these two games, he goes 10 of 23 on twos. That's not very good. He has one move in the two games that is why I would draft him. He has Misi one-on-one upper right, crosses him over, puts it down low, which is hard for a 7-footer to do. Lower than, frankly, Lowry can put it down right now. Low, with a low left-hand dribble drive, gets to the basket, rises up with the left hand over Misi, who's a 7-foot insane athlete. Misi got drafted in the 20s just because of an athlete and finished. It was awesome. Like, the fact that that's there is why you draft him 32nd. The rest of his game concerns me. His number one offensive move is a spin move. It's just not going to work in the NBA. And frankly, the minute he played somebody who was big in the games, in these two games I watched, he spins and then he's off balance. He gets pushed so far off that his shot's pretty wild. That's why he went 10 of 23 on twos. That spin move is just not going to work in the NBA. Misi blocked him twice. He got blocked twice at Boston College also. Like, he's not elevating up over people. His shot's getting blocked. As I mentioned, he's a good on the mid-roll. He's a good passer. If he catches on the mid-roll, he's able to. He made a nice drop-off pass. He made a nice corner. He made nice pass recognition. That's, I guess, where the Kelly Olynyk is coming from. He's a really good outlet passer. Duke ran like he would rebound, and there wouldn't be somebody in the backcourt anymore. They didn't worry about him bringing it up. He would grab it, rebound, maybe take a dribble to it, and then boom, out. And McCain was the benefactor of this. He has no rim defense at all. And I didn't think he got available on the pick and roll. His pick and roll numbers aren't particularly very good. And what jumped out to me is I didn't think that he was able to he wasn't available. I don't think either the Duke guards or his understanding. Now, Baylor brought a third guy in a bunch of times in that game and just took his roll away in the mid-roll. They were playing high pick and roll, and they weren't going to let him catch in the mid-roll. That was clearly the defensive game plan. But any angled pick and roll, I didn't think he made himself available. So you draft him 32. He's offensively a ball handler. He's got a good recognition passer. He's 7 feet tall and he's 20 years old. Yeah, you drafted 32. Absolutely. Do I have like massive high hopes that Filipowski is going to become a regular and replace Kessler? No, I don't. I don't think he has good rim defense. I think that's going to be a real problem for him on how he gets on the floor. I don't think his primary offensive move, that spin move, is going to work. I don't see a jump shot that I think is going to be something that truly lets him stretch it. I think he's going to struggle. I don't think he can play drop because I don't think he can defend the rim against NBA players, and I don't think his second action is good enough. So I think he's going to have to switch, which I actually thought he was fine at. So I think, but this is not like, okay, like it's the right pick at 32. If we drafted Tyler Smith out of the G League, I would have told you, hey, he's really static and he's a left-hander and he's got a good shot and he's big body and he's great, but he can't dribble, he can't pass, he can't right. I mean, it's the 32nd pick. Let's just make sure we're like totally honest about it. The uniqueness of Isaiah Collier is that he's the 29th pick with this like unbelievable skill set that if it comes together and molded together could really, really be something. That you just don't get that at 29 in an NBA draft. I guess Desmond Bane, Jaden McDaniels, you do, but it happens. But, there's not like, this is not some like, I think Kyle Filipowski was the right draft pick at 32. Let me just I just think it's going to be really hard for him. But this happens, I get a little tentative here. I'm not trying to criticize Kyle Filipowski. This is actually a tribute to the league. Like somebody said to me, "Oh, Will Hart." I got a tweet the other day. I did something weird. I was on my mentions for a day or two, and a guy tweeted me, "Oh, Will Hardy got the worst job of all because these guys are going to win too much." Like we didn't draft a single player to help us win a game next year. Like let's make sure we're clear about that. Like Cody Williams and Isaiah Collier are not helping us win games next year. I think they're going to be really good. I think they both have a chance, or they have a chance to be really good. But some of what you hear out of me whenever I do evaluations of these players is the utmost unbelievable respect I have for the 300 NBA players that are in the rotation of teams. They're the 300 greatest players in the world. Trying to compete with them and beat them out is murderous. So Kyle Filipowski is really, really good. But when I start putting Kyle Filipowski up against NBA players, like, ooh, that is going to be really hard for him. It's also going to be really hard for Isaiah Collier. And it's going to be really hard for Cody Williams. And it's going to be really hard for every guy this draft. All right, let's get your thoughts, your comments. Some really cool stuff. Great questions. You guys are always amazing. Coming up, like, what are Collier's comps? How do they all hit? Where do they fit numbers-wise? What's Walker Kessler's fit with the Jazz? Could Lowry Markkanen get traded? And what do the Jazz do with their cap space? It's all next on Locked On Jazz. Today's edition of Locked On Jazz is brought to you by Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. The great work of the Murdoch family for over 80 years in the state of Utah to make sure that you have no regrets each and every time you work with the Murdochs. And then you've got Hyundai, which is this incredible lineup of cars. I was joking with my son yesterday because he actually accidentally had one of our car keys in his backpack and left. I was like, well, don't worry about it. We're a Hyundai used car lot in our driveway right now. We've got our two Santa Fe's, we've got our Ioniq, and I'm driving the Palisade, and they're all fabulous. If you're going to look for a car this weekend, feel free to email me first at dlock09@gmail.com, and we'll get you the VIP treatment over at Murdoch Hyundai, located in Logan, also in Linden, and at 4646 South State Street. Today's show is also brought to you by my good friends over at Intercap. And Steve Carter emailed me yesterday to tell you that he's got some exciting programs going on right now. If you're building your dream home, you may want to take a moment to tell you about an incredible new construction loan program that Intercap Lending has just rolled out. If you're considering building a new home, this is a game changer. Here's the deal. The new construction loan program, you can defer all interest payments during the construction phase. That's right. No payments until your house is ready. How awesome is that? But that's not all. The offer is flexible underwriting to cater to your unique financial situation, making it easier for you to get approved. And speaking of approval, you'll love this. The quick decision-making process means on average, your approval is 3 to 4 weeks. That's practically unheard of in the industry. So that's right. Defer all interest payments during the construction phase and approval within 3 to 4 weeks. They offer the loan up to $3 million, giving you the flexibility to build the house of your dreams without the financial constraints. So give Steve Carter a call, 385-800-8528, or email me directly at dlock09@gmail.com. That's dlock09@gmail.com. Don't miss out. Incredible opportunity with our good friends over at Intercap Lending. All right, it's time to get to your questions on today's edition of Locked On Jazz. For your second listen today, I would suggest Locked On NBA, the show that never stops, and we'll start getting you ready for free agency. All right, let's go first. Why did Filipowski slip so far? I've heard short arms, wild fiance drama, and bad interviews. What have you heard? Well, I've read the internet too. I'm not going to comment on a lot of the internet because I don't know what's true and what's not, nor do I know any background to it, but I sure love that all of you do and can comment on it. But actually, I have found the conversation around it super interesting. So I will admit I dug all in last night because listening to different people's points of views and everything in lives is really fascinating. It was quite the drama. I think I just explained why he slipped. I thought he was drafted appropriately. I really do. I think I thought his game was, and I've thought this the whole time on the draft, he's not a player that when I watched that Baylor game twice now because I watched it the first time to see Walter and McCain. I thought he was drafted completely appropriately. All right, can you give us the numbers that we talked about all time on our players? All right, let's go to the first thing on athleticism of the guys we drafted. So the way we did our numbers, if you're new to this, transition percentile, isolation, and rim finishing is supposed to tell us whether they have functional athleticism. Cody Williams was in the 84th percentile in transition, 86th percentile in isolation, and 96th percentile in rim percentage. So that is fabulous athleticism. Isaiah Collier was in the 74th percentile in transition on 104 attempts, 50 percentile in isolation, which is actually pretty good. And on 157 rim shots was 68th in rim percentile. That's pretty good for a 6'2 guard. Filipowski was in the 44th percentile in transition, which is pretty poor for a 7-footer. 59% in isolation, which is really good for a 7-footer. That's why you draft him. That's that low left-hand move over Misi when he finishes. And he took 247 rim shots. He finished at 61%. So that's lower than both Collier and Cody Williams at the rim. Okay, pick and roll. Isaiah Collier was in the 62nd percentile and ran 170 of them, which is one of the highest numbers of all. Cody Williams ran 53, is not natural ball handler yet. He was in the 49th percentile. And Filipowski actually did not run any. But he on the pick and roll man, on the roll attempt, he ran 124 and was only in the 56th percentile, which is not particularly good. Alex Sarr, by the way, was in the 13th percentile. And Tyler Smith, who we talked about, was only in the 36th percentile, which is why you draft Kyle Filipowski. All right, spot up shooting. Cody Williams was in the 87th percentile. Kyle Filipowski was in the 73rd percentile. And Isaiah Collier was in the 43rd percentile, right near the danger zone, but not in it. And his effective field goal percentage was over 50%. Collier was, which is kind of an important number there because it keeps him out of the danger zone. 54% for Filipowski. Overall catch and shoot. Isaiah Collier was in the 72nd percentile, which means he's fine on catch and shoots. He did not take a lot. He was 17 of 46. Filipowski was in the 66th percentile, 37 of 102. And Cody Williams was in the 95th percentile, only 18 of 39. Dribble off the bounce. Cody Williams does not have that game. He was 5 of 16. Filipowski was 12 of 26, which is actually pretty good. Was in the high percentiles. And Isaiah Collier was 23 of 68 in the 56th percentile. There you go. Scoot is longer, but do you think he's a good comp for Collier? You know, that's a really interesting question. One's like the third pick of the draft. The other's the 29th. So the answer should be no. Scoot had all, but Scoot was the number, like had Collier gone G League Ignite, played in that terrible circumstance, had that big highlight performance, maybe. Now, the problem is I'm not sure Scoot's Henderson in Portland's opening year was so poor that I'm not entirely sure that that's an NBA comp you want. Like Scoot Henderson's opening year in the NBA is disturbing. So I actually think this is a super interesting comp. I give credit. I didn't take the name. Scoot is listed at 6'3", 202 in the NBA numbers. We'll see what Collier gets measured at. But Scoot shot 38% and 32% from three. So Like, I actually think it's a really, really good comp. Scoot was the number 2 or 1 high school player in the country. And yeah, Scoot could have gone to USC and had equally as bad a year, but I don't know what it means. The other comp you're getting is compare and contrast Sexton to Collier. So Colin has a motor that is unmatched. And I think you have to be really aware of that when you're comping someone to Colin. The other one I would say is that Colin's first step might be the best in the NBA. Like, really, really, really good. I think Collier's a more natural passer. The other, Collier measured 6'2.5" with a 6'4" 3/4 wingspan. That's probably exactly what Colin Sexton and Scoot Henderson are, frankly, size-wise. So I think these are really good comps, like, just to start with. Sexton is more of, just to me, just a scorer. And I actually think Collier naturally plays the point guard position a little bit more. Maybe not. Maybe once we get in the NBA, we'll see it differently. But I think that their bodies are the same. I think Collier's more natural. Like, if Sexton's bringing the ball up, I've talked about this before. Sometimes I think he's buffering, trying to think too much. I think Collier sees that more naturally. But I think Sexton plays harder and has a quicker first step. Am I crazy to think Collier has a little bit of Darren Williams in him? So the one thing I would say where this one's different, well, first of all, Darren was like one of the 3 best players in the NBA for a while, and I don't think that's going to happen. And I don't know if you heard the story, but I was in Carmel walking down the street, and I saw Darren the other day. He looked great. I was out there for a wedding. He looks just super, actually. He just seemed really happy and good, so it was great. First thing is Darren was like the top 50 recruit in the country. He was like a big-time recruit, but not like number 1 or 2. He played at Illinois for 3 years. Is the other one I think we have to remember on Darren, if I remember correctly. Like, I think his freshman year, he really doesn't play much. And then he kind of bursts out and plays 2 more years. And he was a young 18, if I remember correctly, on Darren. The last one is that Darren shot it pretty well. And then by the time Darren got to the NBA, he was deadly shooting. So Darren's natural skill set of shooting is really different on that. This might sound silly, but here it goes. I'm hearing a great deal about what a great draft the Jazz had. Got me very excited. Then I checked draft grades for ESPN, and they only gave Utah like a B-. I think Kevin Pelton. So there's 2 things. I'll address Kevin Pelton specifically, but then I'll also address draft grades. So number 1, I think draft grades are the stupidest thing ever. So here's what draft grades are. Draft grades are a bunch of NBA draft experts who've busted their ass and worked hard and done a great job taking their mock draft and saying, I'm going to grade NBA GMs based on whether you followed my mock draft or not. Let me tell you what. If I was a college student and I was getting graded, I don't want to be graded on that scale. That the expert who's not an expert, who doesn't, in theory, doesn't really know all the same information as the person who's dedicating their entire life to it, grades me based on the fact that I didn't follow their mock draft. Right? So I think draft grades are absurd. Now, Kevin Pelton has a numbers system that we've talked about all week on how he evaluates collegiate players. Cody Williams was 51st on his numbers. So for Cody Williams to go 10 on his number system, he doesn't see it. I'm pretty certain that he gave the Lakers an F, I would guess, because Dalton Connect was 77th on his number system. Oh, he gave them a B+. His comment is he couldn't buy the lottery hype for Connect, but the middle of the first round, drafting him primarily on the strength of shooting makes more sense. He said he'll still have to prove and hang on. Okay. So Cody Williams is not going to get a great draft grade from the analytics people. And understandably so. like what we've talked about Cody Williams and why I'm so excited about Cody Williams is it's all there. It's all undercover right now, but it's all there. You know, what we're excited about is kind of what Pelton opens his analysis with. He says his analysis is if you told people a year ago the Jazz would draft Collier and Williams, they would have asked how the Jazz got their second lottery pick. So he kind of gets that. He also says, I'm higher on Collier. He was more productive than Nike EYBL, as well as at USC. Grant Williams played through injury at Colorado. I would have preferred the Jazz going a different direction with a 10th pick. I did like the value Utah stopping Filipowski's slide early in the second round, and he does the Linux comp for him. So he gives him a B-, but because he's not a Cody Williams guy. He was 55th in his analysis of his numbers. And understandably, right? He doesn't have big numbers. His shooting numbers are on small attempts. It's all there, but we'll see. Jazz still don't have a top 20 player under 25. What would it take for each individually to break into that group, and who's most likely? So for Cody Williams, it's learning to have a dribble game and a tiny bit of offensive wiggle, and that for the shooting to be real. Like it's just so many few attempts, it's hard to tell. For Collier, it's being able to be a dynamic force in this dribble drive game and a good enough shooter that it's a threat that people have to deal with. And for Filipowski, I don't see a route for him to being a top 20 player under 25. I think he could be a good NBA rotation player if used correctly. You know, let's be honest about Kelly Olynyk. Kelly Olynyk, we love Kelly Olynyk. There's no player I've enjoyed covering more. I think he averaged about 17 minutes a game for most of his career. Right? Like, so, you know, do I think that Kyle Filipowski could play 17 minutes a night yeah, sure. That'd be great. Kelly averaged 20 minutes most of his career. Right? 19 in Miami for a year. So 19 to 20 almost every year. Could Filipowski end up doing that? That'd be great. That'd be a big win to me for Filipowski. All right, we'll come back. What will be our starting lineup in February? What's going on with Walker? And is Lowry on the verge of being traded? Those are all next as we continue on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. Today's edition of Locked on Jazz is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Summer activity. I'm watching that George Strait concert. Chris Stapleton, Little Big Town right now at Rice Eccles. How much sun do I want to sit in? I know enough about the sun. I know which side I want to sit in. I'm watching only seats on that side right now on my Game Time app. And I'm going to use the code Locked on NBA and get $20 off my first purchase. By the way, concert tickets are so expensive. Is this the going rate? Is this just what I have to pay for concert tickets? I think it is. So last minute deals, flash deals, zone deals, all in pricing, seat views, lowest price guaranteed, Game Time ticket coverage, flexible customer service policy. To download the Game Time app right now, use the code Locked on NBA to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account, redeem Locked on NBA. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. 1 million parts for your ride or die. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for the winning championship always makes you keep your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle, level it up to peak performance. Whether it's a roof rack, an exhaust kit, an LED headlights, or more. Speed in, power, or style. eBay Motors has you covered. Over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, each time, or your money back. So eBay Motors can make sure you're burning rubber, not cash, with all the parts you need and the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP. Bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only to U.S. customers. eBay Motors. It is Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Taking your questions for your second listen today. A little Locked on NBA when we're done. Collier, George, Williams, Hendricks, Kessler actually seem to fit decently as a starting five on paper. Over, under February before we see the starting five. Under! We're not seeing it. I don't think we see that as starting five this year. Maybe for a day somewhere, but I doubt it. Lowry's going to be in there. John Collins is still on the roster. Colin Sexton's in there. I don't see we're seeing that. Jordan Clarkson's still on the roster. I don't think we're seeing that starting line, but it is fun. Like, it's an interesting, we're beginning to see pieces, right? It's got a long way to go, but it's got some pieces. Sounds like there's some chemistry fit issues with Kessler losing his starting spot as reps met with the Jazz front office in the offseason. Does that mean he'll be back in the starting lineup? All right, so I'm not going to make any friends here. I don't think the Jazz had a great year with Walker, and I don't think Walker had a great year with the Jazz. It just happens. It got off early. Walker seemed way out of sorts early in the year. I literally wondered if he was okay, just his body language and everything. He went through training camp as a starting center. He and John Collins didn't work together. He got benched. If I was Walker, I would have been pissed. I'm not sure he did something that deserved to be benched. John Collins starts ahead of him. If I was Walker, I wouldn't have known why. I could have gotten an explanation. I wouldn't have listened. I wouldn't have bought it. I'm just being honest. I would have been upset about it. He got injured early in the year on the Sabonis thing. So it was his first injury as a pro. Then he comes back. He's coming off the bench. He plays really well. Then he starts and he doesn't it just was a messed up year. It was just a messed up year. And I don't think anyone, I don't think Walker didn't probably deal with it great. And I'm not sure that Walker thinks the Jazz treated him great. Stephen Covey says, you got to view the world from other people's lenses. So if Walker but I don't think anybody, if the Jazz looked at Walker, I'm sure they thought he was playing without energy and didn't have his usual juice, and they were upset about that. And if you're Walker, you're looking at the Jazz saying, I got benched, and I don't think anyone looked at anyone from anyone else's lenses. So the fact that if they got together in the offseason and spent some time together, which is not unusual, by the way, is kind of great, because to me, that just tells me that I just got a breaking news notification coming across. I'm trying to see what it was. Manuel quickly signed a 5-year, $175 million deal. If they got together, that's great, because you got to get each personal view from the other people's lenses. So do I think Walker's going to be back in the starting lineup? I don't know. Is Walker going to come with his juice and energy and play with a little more pizzazz? Are the Jazz going to? I don't know. John Collins and Walker Kessler can't play together very well. That has been true. Would a straight swap of Lowry for Şengün make sense for both sides? Both players would do max extension. Both teams would get a player on the right timeline. I think Şengün's really, really good. I might be the only one. I might be on an island on this one. My personal opinion is that Lowry's skills translate better to a variety of different ways to win. I still think there's a little question of whether you can run your entire offense through Şengün and have him then be your defensive center. Lowry, I think you could win with at the 3, 4, or 5. So I think Lowry might be a better player than Şengün. So I would be reluctant to that. I think Lowry is really special. I would be really reluctant to trade Lowry. I think he's really, really special. At the same time, I have this question too. If the Jazz get offered for Lowry, like Brooklyn did for Bridges, do you have to take it? Every player has a moment where they become available. I'm not sure Lowry is available. Lowry is the most talked about player in the league right now. Lowry, the Jazz are going to get offers for Lowry. There might be a moment where the offer is too big. I doubt it. I suspect, to answer this question, with their cap space, do you see the Jazz acquiring some salary dumps with their picks this summer? I expect the Jazz use their salary space to make trades and to sign Lowry to an extension. I think he's eligible in August. That would be, I probably should know that exactly. That's, so I think that's how the free agent world is not very exciting. And so the salary cap leads to trades and extensions. Why do I think August? He's eligible this summer. I know that. I thought there was a date. And I was just looking it up to see if I had it in my notes, and I do not have a specific date. So maybe that's wrong. I wonder why I just said that. Huh. All right. But hopefully we'll get that done, because I think that is more likely to be the way to use these things. All right. It is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers. Have a great weekend. Hope you've loved the draft. Thanks for all your tuning in. We now send you the first ever 24/7 national sports channel, Locked On Sports Today. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. See you.